Hello and welcome back. It's been a while. So, yeah, I've been really busy. Ever since going freelance, I've just not had time to do anything. Is the lighting okay? Do we need more light? Oh, no, you don't want to see my face that much. Yeah, got a new camera, so hopefully the quality is better. New microphone, quality should be better. Got light, but I'm going to keep that off. We're going to work in the dark today. So let's have a look. We are working on this. Let's build this API kit. So can I zoom the font in? We're going to keep it at that, but let's maybe push this one up to 18. Ooh. Okay, I didn't want. Editor. Can I make it bigger? How do we make it bigger? It's been that long. Don't even know what that ligatures are. Just crazy stuff. Crazy. So, anyway, tell you what, let's put me down in the corner, like over here or something, or yeah, no. If I get in the way, I'll hide myself. Otherwise, we'll crack on. So, we are building API Kit. Now, API Kit is going to be the ultimate jumpstart for building scalable, production-ready APIs with Laravel. Thank you, ChatGPT, for that fantastic title. That is what I'm going to stick with. Now, we have got all of these going on. So we've got authentication, authorization, rate limiting, validation, API resources, error response handling, you name it, we're going to do it. So I think the first thing I'm going to do here is let's get this one checked off, right? So composer require Laravel Horizon. So Horizon's going to be super useful. Now, it's been a while since I've used Horizon. I'm just going to drag a window across. Let's go to the Laravel docs. And while we're here, could we just kind of appreciate how nice the Laravel docs are currently? Like, look at that. That is something else, isn't it? The update to the website was great, but then they updated the docs, and I was just impressed that they went to that level of detail. Can I zoom in? Yeah, here we go. So packages, let's come down to Horizon. So installation, got it. I've got to install it. Cool. So I need that. So let's come over here and let's install that. Yes, let's do it. We are ready. So Horizon is installed. Perfect. Configuration, blah, blah, blah. That's all good. Environments, I'm not going to worry about right now. So we've got API kit.test. That's not found. That's good. So Horizon. We have got Horizon inactive. Awesome. So how do we actually start Horizon? Because that's that is a question. Blah, 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 blah. Don't need any of that stuff right now. Dashboard authorization. This is definitely something that needs to be done. So we need the Horizon service provider. Here it is. Parent boot. Notifications, cool. Thank you, Mr. Squiggly. Clean that up. Don't need that. Company not really being used. The gate. Now this is what we need to fix. Ooh, don't want to delete it. I just want to delete that comment. Okay, so first off, declare it static. Secondly, make that strict. And then we're going to say, I don't know, I'm just going to do me for now. Why has that got a squiggle? No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do any of that. Okay, I'm just going to leave it as that. That's fine. Yes, I am streaming again. So I got special permission from Amy to live stream during the evening for me. So we should be good. Right, this is something that we probably will do, or I'll keep in. It's telling me I should delete it, and I don't need that, but that will stay. I just hope that pint doesn't remove it. Let me check. That is all good. So what have we got going on here? We have got a very standard Laravel API composer. So API starter kit, I've added the starter kit keyword into there. 8.4, latest version of the framework, latest version of all of the things. It's got a few extras like Rove Security Advisory, PHP Stan, Laristan as well. Then we've got npx concurrently running, which will do the serve, listen, and pale. I've removed Vite because you do not need it, not when you are building an API. Then we've added a lint command to run test, Laravel pipe with test. And then we've got pint to run actual pint. Then we've got PHP Stan without any sort of memory limit so that it doesn't crap out. Then the new test is in there too. And that is all that I've done on this really so far for that part. Now, routing. Routing is important in your API, organizing your routes. So inside of Bootstrap and app, we have got a couple of things. We have got our routes are under routes API routes, and commands are under routes console routes. There's no API prefix. We have removed that prefix because it's a standalone API. It's the whole point of it. And I organize routes like this because then when I come over to my routes like this, I can say, oh, look, here's my auth routes. And here's, I don't know, here's all of my project routes. And it's just well organized. I've got a file dedicated for each resource at that point. And then what we've got check abilities and check for any ability for token scopes. Always useful. We've got the ensure email is verified. Super, super useful. Ensure user has permission. So I've built my own little kind of permissions thing here. So let me walk you through it. What we've got is we have got enums. Under RBAC, you've got permission and role. Now, a role, you've got admin and user. That's the two main ones that come out the gate, right? You've always got an admin user who you want to be able to do all of the things, and then you've got a standard user. You can extend this. And then you've got permissions. What can each role do? We're talking about role-based access control, right? So we've got permissions. And currently, I've just added a delete user as an example. It's got a description using an attribute saying allows deleting a user. And then the role attribute for this is tagged to a specific role within the enum. So this could be a user or an admin. It's type autocomplete wonderfulness. And the way that this works is that our user has a role, for example. So here we go. We have got a role on our user inside of our fillable field down here. It is fillable. Let me zoom in, actually. Here we go. That might be easier for you folks at home. I do apologize. We've got a role in the casts, which is going to cast it to our enum, which I have typed up here so it's accessible. And then the moment of truth has permission. Does this user have permission based on their role? Pass them a permission. Okay, so what we do, we get the role attributes. So we get the role attribute, allowed rules. So we're getting that permission and we're going, okay, this permission has got attributes on it, right? And this is then going to go through and get a class constant for this class name, turn an array map of getting the attributes. Fantastic. Get a specific attribute from that. All good. So it's just going to give us the attributes. And then we're going to say, okay, in array, the user's current role, allowed roles, make sure it's strict. So we can say things such as, I don't know, case, perform, dangerous, action, dangerous. And then we could say, actually, the role attribute, the role that we want to do for this is admins only. And then the description can be allows performing a super dangerous action. And there we go. We've got our roles and permissions all configured in code and version controlled, and we don't have to do database lookups. We're doing a quick reflection based on the authenticated user. We go, okay, based on the user's current role, can they perform this permission? Which then leads us on to the middleware. We've got ensure user has permission. We pass a permission through, and then we just do okay, if there's no user, and if the current user doesn't have permission to do this, abort 403, or if they do, return next. You're all good. So super simple things like that really, I feel, help that developer experience when it comes to actually building an application or an API, personally. Now, this is obviously going to be very opinionated by Steve, which is fine. It's what people are here for. But then we've got our exceptions. So when we're rendering an exception, if we accept JSON, then we're going to return this new API exception renderer. Otherwise, we're going to fall back to that default rendering. Now, our API exception renderer is a little thing I cooked up, although that formatting will throw me off. So there we go. So what we're going to do, we're going to get the status, the type, the title, the detail, and the instance. And our response should be formatted as such. Now, if we're going to be throwing a validation exception, then our response is going to have errors as well, because we need to provide that little bit of extra detail. And if it is local, then we're going to include that exception and the trace. Let's look at an example. So let's go up and set up our environment on good old Yaki Doodle, HTTPS API kit.test. Awesome. Now let's create a new HTTP request, and we are going to go for base URL and just send that. We'll get a 404. Now let's go add some headers. We're going to accept application JSON. And now we've got full details. Fantastic. But if I come over to my .env file, for example, and we say, let's put this into production. Finally, we get there. Now, I do think we could do with formatting this a bit nicer, but I'm going to have a look at that, I think. I'm going to have a look to see what I can do about the JSON encoding part, because I think there's a better way to do this. But we've got a solid start. So what we do, we're going to set this back to local so that we've got all of the things. And let me walk you through how this works. I like this. It was so fun to do. So we're going to get this status code for this exception. Now, if it's an authentication exception, it's 401. If it's an authentication is 401, authorization is 403, validation is 422, not found, it's a 404, otherwise it's a 500. Now let's say we create a default, some sort of default something, right? Let's, I don't know, E instance of bad request exception, something like that. Then what we will do is throw that 400 as an example. Then we're going to get that get type URI, and we're going to return HTTP statuses, blah, 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 title. And what we could do is a 400 for bad request. And up here, we need to add that 400 for that bad request too. So it's very thorough. Get detail. We're either going to get the message or an unexpected error occurred. You could go further into this if you need to. And all of that is then going to turn into the response, passing back the status and the content type of problem JSON, which you will see here. So as you can see, it's quite nice, straightforward sort of stuff going on, right? It's all logical things that you've usually got to set up yourself. And that's kind of the idea of like a starter kit, right? You want to get a portion of that boilerplate rubbish that you've got to do out of the way. So let's move on. So that is what I've done so far. I've obviously got a couple of other bits, such as registering users. So we've got a contract up here for problem detail. This might be useful later on. I just created it because you never know. I think the idea with this is that I want to, if the exception, I'm going to add a clause. So basically, custom exceptions, you can add this in, implement problem detail, and then you can define how your custom exceptions are then cast to a problem detail response, in effect. It should have all of these things on it, of course. But I'm getting sidetracked. All of these side quests are killing me. Okay, actions, create a user. So HTTP, let's go into our controllers. Controllers are useful. We've got a login controller, right? So login request. I'm not gonna lie, I ripped this straight out of Breeze and their API. So authenticate, ensure it's not rate limited, all of the good stuff, event new lockout, all of that stuff that you'd expect. Then what we're going to do, we're just going to create an API access token with all abilities by default right now. You can look into that later. But then we're just going to return a JSON response with the token. Now, these tokens typically don't have any sort of expiry. But you could add expires, and I believe token X. I'm not actually sure what that is. So access token. So if you get the access token, let's just access token. Get attributes. Belongs to, can, all of that stuff. So if I just come to here, this is going to give me a personal access token, which has an expires at. There we go. So, you can do that sort of thing. I'll have to do it that way. Okay. So we'll ignore that. You could add that. I'm not going to, because that means I'm going to create squiggles where I don't want them. Add that up there. So there's a validation exception, all good. So you can log in. So let's go make sure that my database is all set up. So my great fresh seed, I should have the database seeder set up. I'm going to use those credentials. I'm not going to add my own credentials in there. We're just going to use testitexample.com and come over to Yak. So what we want to do is we want a new folder for authentication. And within here, we are going to create a new HTTP request where we're going to post to base URL. I like to say auth/login personally. Now, we want to accept application JSON, and the content type that we will send across is application JSON. Now you can obviously use Yak and we can do it this way, but I kind of like doing it in this very raw feeling here. I'm going to rename this as login a user. Root request. There we go. So we've got all of that going on. That's a post, blah, blah. Currently not found. So we need to wire this up. So now if I come down to my roots down here, you'll see I've only got this set up so far. Super, super simple. Now, I like to prefix auth as auth, and then I like to say group, use that base path helper, and say that the path is roots API auth. This is how I like to set up my roots file. This I'll sort out later. But this is what I like to do. So that down here, I can say root list, all my Horizon stuff, auth login should now respond. Unprocessable entity, errors, email, password. Perfect. That is how I want all of my API stuff to work. So body, I can come to body and say that I want to pass over JSON. Can I? I can use my environment to grab these. So test user email and test user password. Ooh, did I save? Autosave. Perfect. So test user email and password is test user password. Send. Email is a required field. Okay. So info, blah, 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 URL to that, headers. Okay, I don't think that's, let me have a look. Let's just do that. What happens if I do that? There we go. Okay, so maybe I've got to put it in quotes. I'm not sure. Yeah, probably need to put it in quotes. Nope. There you go. Second token. We got it. Awesome. So I can grab this, come to my environment and say test user token is that. Awesome. I've now got an API token, which means that if I just duplicate this, come down to here and say user, keep it at that. Auth, we're going to have a bearer token. Test user token, send the request. I've got a user, right? Perfect. My person is a user. So we're getting somewhere. We've got login working. That is all good. Register, I believe, should work as well. So what I will do, I'll test that in a moment. But first things first, that API output is horrible, right? Nobody wants to work with that when they're integrating with an API. So let's make a resource. And we're going to call this user resource. And then we're going to create a date resource as well, because when you're always going to be returning dates and you always want them in a specific way. And when I'm building, like when I'm working on like an inertia app and I'm using resources or I'm talking to an API, but I'm always kind of casting it to a type. So that's kind of the way that I feel about my API. I should be kind of have this consistent experience at the end of the day, right? So for now, I'm going to keep that as that and do that. This property carbon interface for the resource like this. The app that I am using is called Yak. So YakApp, the API client for modern developers. It's created by the person who originally created Insomnia, who then sold it to, I can't remember who, swore he'd never do it again, but then got frustrated with what happened to Insomnia and decided to rebuild it. And this is built using Tori. It's open source. There is a pricing model, but I'm on the personal license. I've never had an issue with it. So give it a try. It's actually not bad. Okay, so I'm typing carbon interface to the resource so that if I'm returning a resource, I'm returning a carbon interface. For example, instance this resource. So let's then go to this. And what we'll say is that created is a new date resource, and the resource is going to be this resource created at, need to fix this one in a minute. So then we need to go to API routes and return request user within a new user resource. Drop that in just for testing, and there we go, instance, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, we've got stuff. We're getting there. So what we want this to do is, I always like to return that human value. So you get the data from an API, and you could convert it to human on client side, right? But then you've got to require a library or write your own utility. I've got that data. I can quickly call a method in my API response. You can return the timestamp, return to a date time string, to a time string, to a date time string, ISO, RFC, something else, something else, something else. Now, that might be getting a little bit excessive, right? But what I like to do is human and string. So this resource to, I like to use that one. There we go. So human and string. I mean, you could call this ISO, or you could call this ISO string. That part is kind of up to you. I usually just call it string, because then I'm just saying, okay, this human, this string, it's all good. So let's clean this one up now. Next up, property user for the resource. Then we're going to have our return types put in here. Now we've got a date resource already lined up. We've got the ID, so we can say this resource ID, and we know that's going to be a string. We've got the name, so we can say this resource name. Email, we can do like this resource email. You know, we're starting to get a better picture at this point, right? So let's just open our app service provider. We're going to do that, but then our JSON resource, we want to say without wrapping, so that when we do that, we're getting an actual object back. What's next? So email, I do this differently usually. So because I know I've got verification going on, I do that, and then we go verified, and this resource, it's like it knows how I code. There we go. Email.address, and you can say, okay, so email.verified is true, or .email, or name, data.human, create.string. So people can actually interact with that API really nicely. That's kind of the whole point, right? And what I like to do is when I am working with an API, or when I'm building an API, should I say, I like to make sure that I am integrating with it at the same time and feeling that pain. So I've got a ULID, because UUID just feels ugly. My name, I have my email in a specific way, dates in a specific way, and things just feel nice, right? So next up, we've got that. Roots, all good. Our next one is registering. So now we're in for a treat. Let's go and register, and then we'll look back at this code. So authentication, what we want to do is do a new HTTP request. This is going to be a post request to that base URL. And we're going to say auth register. Headers, accept application JSON. My content type is going to be also application JSON. Awesome. I'm getting errors back, which is what I wanted. Now I can pass over my JSON. So I want to register a new user. So the name is me. The email is me. The password is going to be password. But obviously the password needs to be confirmed. So password, confirmation, password. So what I'll do is, once this is sent over, it's accepted. We get a message. We are registering your account. Please check your email for confirmation. Now, if I come down to mail, hopefully I should see it. It is not in there. Why is it not in there? Wait. This is probably why. I need this running in the background. Verification.verify is not defined. I don't even know what that's for. Not got a clue. Create new user. I haven't done the verification URL for when a user registers. I'll get to that bit. Okay, so an email would have been sent. And what's going to happen is we're going to hit this endpoint, this register controller, and we're going to hit this registration request. We're going to validate it. To get the payload, we're going to create this registered user or register user. We're going to be very specific and say, okay, let's return a payload of some description. So that when I say request payload, I know I'm going to get that register user. Now we're going to defer dispatching this background job until we've returned that response, so that we've got a snappy API, and we're returning HTTP accepted because we haven't actually created that resource yet. We've accepted the request at this point. Now, this background job is just going to call an action, then dispatch an event. It's going to say, okay, create user action using a database transaction. Let's turn the payload to an array. And this to array is just going to do the passwordy stuff. Attempts 3. Yep, all good, all good. But the only problem that I am seeing with what I have done so far is in my registration request, this needs to be using a hasher. So hash make value that. So when we are creating our payload to pass to a background job that's going to be serialized, we need to make sure we aren't storing that plain text password in our queue, right? Logic. So we're going to dispatch that. That's going to do that. We're going to register your account. Please check your email, etc., etc. So what is next? So this is my dev. So let's go and create this. And there's something to do with language publishing, right? That is, you could probably see where my thoughts are going here. Let me check the time. I do have to finish on time today. Here we go. Lang publish. Lang publish, go. So, yeah, I've got to finish on time because I need to eat something today because I'm absolutely starved. So, EN, we've got auth, we've got our usual auth stuff. Failed password, throttle. We're going to do registering, and we're going to swap that to we are registering your account. Please check your email for confirmation. Perfect. So then what we can do is this. We can actually say translate auth.register. Now that registering is key. So there we go. We've now got a more localized API at this point, right? Okay, perfect. Perfect. Now you could go as far as these keys as well if you really wanted to, but right now I don't think I'm going to go that far. That might be a little bit too far for me right now. Registering, too many login attempts, blah blah, all good. Language covered. This bit sorted. Auth, obviously working on logout, and what logout will do, it will get the user's current access token, delete it, and just return a no content. Simple, straightforward. And what we will do is close all of that down. Now, I can't remember the package name. I think it's called Scribe of some description. Here we go. Knuckles, what's it? Knuckly, what's it? Here we go. Generate API documentation for humans from your Laravel code base. Now, this is what I'm thinking of doing. If anyone's got suggestions, drop them in the comments. I'm not going to do it right now, but thought process, I've hit a point where I'm thinking of generating my open API spec. So next up, I've also created my personal access token model because I like to create a personal one in case I want to override anything. For example, if I come down to database migrations, come over to this. Now this, I'm using ULIDs, so I want this to match, right? And then all of the timestamps there, then tokenable, I'd like to move that down to here. String text, all good. So that in this over here, what I can say is use has ULIDs. And then once I migrate fresh and seed, if I come back to my login, yes, my token is longer, but it's more obfuscated as well. Grab that, replace that, and then we're done. And we can go say, okay, give me my user. And there we go. I've got my user record. So my API is coming together. Let's just add all of that. We're going to git commit -am, and we are going to say beat starting the API kit. And then I'm going to go to Steve King. Can't remember. API kit. There we go. That would be the quickest way to do it. So let's just make sure that this code is pushed up. For anybody interested, here is the link that you can go to. Or if you can see it on the screen, feel free to grab and copy and paste and do your business. But this is the start of the repo. Ultimate start, blah, blah, blah. Laravel Horizon is in place. Authorization, authentication is almost complete. All of this is going to be included, plus more, most likely. So we are getting there. We are definitely getting there. What is next? So that is that part. That is that part. You don't need to see me basically ripping Laravel Breeze stuff across. So let's move on to something else. Email verification. I'm going to work through that. Cause is published. Request and response logging. Now, if you're like me and you've got an API, you like to know what's going on, right? You like to know everything that's going on within your API and be able to kind of drill this sort of stuff down. I like to create a model for that usually, for kind of quick dev stuff. So we're going to make a model called API log, and we won't create a factory. We'll just create a migration for this one. So we're going to go ahead and just work on this. So delete that, let Laravel paint it all and declare that. So we're going to say ULID, ID, primary. When did we receive that? All good. So we're going to do things like string for the method. We're going to have table string for the URL. Table unsigned. Unsigned integer for the status code. We have like a table JSON for the request and a table JSON for the response. We're going to make these nullable like so. So what we want to do here, we're just kind of quickly logging stuff. And what we'll also do is we're going to say table string, and we're going to have a request ID, and that will be a unique field at this point. What else could we do? I don't know, table unsigned big integer time, default it to 0. So this is something really basic, right? You could use Telescope, you could use Pulse, you could use Nightwatch when it's available, you could use Treble, which is a company I used to work for, you could use Open Telemetry. There's so many things you could do to gain some level of observability. But while you're just developing that API and you want to kind of just track things and chase things down, sometimes you can just say, here's my API log. Let's just do it. So use has ULIDs. We're going to create fillable field. We're going to have a request ID. We are going to have a method, a URL, a status, the time it took, the request, the response, and that was all of it. Yes, it was. Perfect. That is all I need at this point. So, and that is a list of strings. And I mean, you could include headers. You could say, user as well. So you can say like table foreign ULID, and you can say user ID, but it is nullable. Let's index it. We will constrain it to that users table, cascade, or realistically, you're going to want a null on delete at this point, right? What I might also do is table text token nullable. There we go. So our API log also needs to have a token and a user ID. So token and user ID. So at this point, we want to look at our casts. Return that. So what have we got? We have got a status, which is an integer. We have got time as an integer. The request is going to be JSON. And the response is going to be JSON. And the token, we are actually going to encrypt. So encrypted. So there we go. That is going to return an array of things. You can add that relationship. You can say that it belongs to a specific user. Return this belongs to related user class. The foreign key is user ID. Like so. And then do what I usually do is add property string ID. Property request ID, the method, URL, status, time, request, response, token, user ID, and then we're going to have a carbon interface will be created at carbon interface null for the updated at, and then we can say user, but this is a nullable user at this point. So we've got some basic log modelish stuff going on. That is all good. And what we then want to do is, let's go to the user and just say something like, I don't know, public function logs has many. Return this as many related API log based on the user ID. There we go. And then up here, we can actually type that as well. We're going to say there's a collection of API logs. Now, realistically, that's going to be an int API log, but there we go. That's just minor detail. Okay, so then what you can do is make middleware log API requests. Come over to here, and what you could probably do is let's just clear that all up. So usually I'd put this into like a background job. I'm not going to this time. So what I'll do is start is microtime true, and then we're going to basically get that response is next request. Later, we're going to return that response like so. But before that, we are going to defer the API log query create. Now, the request ID is request fingerprint. Then the method is going to be request method. URL is going to be the request full URL. We don't really need that full URL. We can just say like path at this point. What's next? Status is get status code. Time, microtime and now, minus blah, blah, blah. Cast it to an integer. Get all of the request details. Get the contents of the response. User ID. Done. Oh, I can actually just do that. Nice. Perfect. So we've got this new kind of log API requests available. So we can go to Bootstrap, app, middleware. We can say add a new alias, and we can just add this anywhere, really. We're going to add it here. Log API requests. And there we go. So we could just call that log requests like that. And now if I go to here and migrate, that's all good. Let's close all of that down. And what we can do, we can be very specific. We can say in our routes, we want to log all of them, or we only ever want to log, specific ones, or we could log any of these log requests like so. So many things that we could do where you want to do it. For now, I'm just going to grab all of that and we're going to say root middleware log requests, and we're going to group it all. There we go. Wrap all of that all up. What's up with that? Fix a file. There we go. Right, so if I come back over to my sites, come down to my API kit and say open in Table Plus. I don't know if I can zoom. Can I zoom? No. Okay, we'll do this in a different way in a second. Well, look, you've got our API logs there, and then come over to here, and we can say, okay, who am I? Target class log request doesn't exist. Log requests. There we go. Make a couple of requests. And there we go. We are logging our requests. There's our request data. There's our response data. And obviously, this is all very, you might want to be a bit more sensitive with this. But yeah, I've encrypted the token. You could encrypt any bit that you want. We're going to /user. Now, you could maybe go a little bit further and say, instead of the path, you could say, I don't know, request route to that. Don't need to pass anything in, and you can say get name. Let's try that. I think that's one thing that you could do. So what I'll do is I am going to truncate that one and send that again. Did not log it for some reason. Might have failed, might not have failed. URL. Okay, so request path. It's an alternative. Yeah, the name wasn't found. That's a required field. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we'll just keep it at that for now. That's maybe diving into the weeds a little bit too much there, but git add that, git commit. We're going to say this feature, and this is basic API request logging. Push that up. Open our README. Request response logging is in there. That isn't done yet. Need to do a few other things. Error response handling is done. I've started adding these API resources, so they are in place. Authorization we have. Rate limiting we will do. Validation, we've got basic validation, so we know that we're going to do that. And we know we've got authentication mostly done. Git pull. New repo problems. I hate rebating. There we go. Git pull. Don't give me merge conflicts. Merge conflict in API routes. So routes. What's the difference? That is the difference. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So what we need to do is just run that first. Then there won't be any problems. So git add, commit. Merge issues, damn it. Git push. There we go. Now back to our thingy mawixits. Here we go. We've got our actions running. Lint and test is running, so you can come over to here. We can go and create a status badge because badges are all the rage. Open up our README and drop that in there. And then our linting can also, linter is also passing. Git pull, any changes? Shouldn't have been. No, git add, git commit. Sure, we have badges too. Hello, Nelson. How are you doing? I just implemented some basic API log handling. So we've got our tests and our linter all passing, all good to go. We're logging API requests in deferred middleware, which is really nice. We just grab that, do this, do that, away we go. Something super simple. But obviously, if you get lots of API requests, you're going to end up filling up this database table really quickly. Now you can create like a specific connection for this API logs and then configure it on the model and say, just use that connection, blah, blah, blah. It's so much you could do. But, while in development, this is somewhat useful because you can debug why you're getting that 500 error. It means you have to set up all of this tooling. Okay, so all of that is done, and I am out of time. Wow, that went quickly. So API kit is underway. We have got some authentication going on. We have got getting the authenticated user. We've got several things happening. Got a few things that I still need to do. Obviously, this isn't something that's going to be done in one stream. This is going to take a few streams to finish. But authentication is underway. Authorization is working using our enum and role attributes. So we can say that this role or role, we could possibly actually, can I do that? No. Okay, I might have to refactor that at some point. And it is repeatable for a class. It's all good. So there's a couple of things that we could do around this to say, okay, so we want roles and we want, admin and role. That'll be my eventual aim, I think. So it might be multiple roles that have this for this action, because it could be anybody could do it. So you're going to want to tag it. But it's one of those least privileged sort of things. So only add what you have to add. And I'm going to leave that there to remind myself. I hate leaving squiggles and red squiggles everywhere, but auth via SSH key. Now that's a fun idea. I did look into that for API auth, but it's just there's too many kind of variables with it. But as I said, I am on a time crunch today and I wasn't going to go on further. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to commit that, because leaving it like that reminds me I've got to fix it. But that is the start of API Kit. We've got authentication very much underway, authorization underway, but with some improvements that I'd like to add. Come back to my list. Rate limiting. Well, Laravel's got it out the box, but I like to register rate limiters in a specific way. Validation's in place. Our API resources are in place. We're handling error responses correctly. We're dispatching background jobs for our write operations. We've got Laravel Horizon in place. Our request response logging is in place. Cross-site request forgery configuration, we need to publish and tweak. Email verification and password reset flows for the API needs implementing. Then open API generation, test setup, and auth enrolled test helpers need creating. So we still got a fair bit to do, but we made a start. That's the main thing. You could clone this now and finish the rest in a way that works for you, or you can wait until I'm done, or drop a PR, juststeveking.link/API kit. Good old link shorteners, but it doesn't really help when you've got Just Steve King as a domain there. But hey, that is life. But again, thank you all for tuning in. I will be live streaming again next week on Tuesday. This time I'm going to be building a SDK in PHP for fun. Also profit, because I'm being kind of paid to do it. So Tuesday, feel free to tune in. It'll be during the day this time, so apologies those of you in a different time zone, but it will be during the day for me here in the UK. I'll be building a PHP SDK for Savala, which is going to be a lot of fun. They've got an interesting API, so I think there's some cool things we could do with their SDK. But until then, like, comment, subscribe. It makes me feel good about myself, and it gives me a way to justify the time spent live streaming to my wife. It's good to be back. I will be back more. So thank you all for being awesome. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you next week. Otherwise, I will see you on the interwebs. Goodbye.